Hey, this is Rich Gaspari, and we're here with Beyond the Muscle, and I have Dr. Ara here with me, a doctor of emergency medicine, sports medicine, functional medicine, correct?
Yeah.
So it's great to have you here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Gus. My pleasure.
And, we had dinner together, and we had really interesting conversation on so many things. What's really cool about you is you work with many athletes. You work with gold medalists, guys who've been to the elite top. So when we started talking, there's a lot of similarities. I was a professional bodybuilder, but to be at the top of any sport, whether it's basketball, football, bodybuilding, there's a certain type of person that's able to get there. It's not just the physical aspect of it, but also the mental. But we're not going to get into that today, but we want to talk about how, what you need to do to help with high performance athletes. What you do to get someone to become better. And then, we also talked about there's really not much of a difference between getting an athlete to become the best and also how to keep someone young through anti-aging. They're very similar, both of these type of protocols.
Yeah, I think that's, first of all, Rich, absolute pleasure being here. I was in England when I first started going to the gym, looking at magazines, and you were on the magazines, and I can't believe I'm sitting here with you right now. It's so crazy. But coming back to it, there's a lot of distinction. People are making this distinction between anti-aging and high performance, right? And I beg to differ. And I asked the question, well, what's the difference? What is the difference, right? If you are trying to age better or age gracefully, right? I'm not a big fan of the word anti-aging. I think there's a lot of beautiful things that come from aging. But the body takes a turn for slowing down, for the worse, if you want to call it. And there's ways we can mitigate that or slow down that process, right? Similarly, if you're chasing high performance, which to me means fulfilling your full athletic potential in sports. High performance in business is something else. But in sports, how can I maximize what was inside you? How do I squeeze out every last bit, right?
Every bit out of that high performance athlete to get in, because at that level, you're such an extreme, just that tiny
fraction
will get you to be number 1 to number 5.
This last Olympics, right? The gold medal winner in 100 meters won it by 0.02 seconds. You look at the margins you're working with, right? Like it's tiny. So that's high performance. And also as an athlete, the athletes I work with, I've worked with so many world number ones, Olympians. The one thing they will tell you is like they are people who are willing to leave it all out there. So you got to help them leave it all out there. That process versus someone who's trying to age a little bit slower is kind of the same. If you look at the processes that I have 20 years of my work in here, right? Chronic inflammation. This has now become a buzzword. Fundamentally, that chronic inflammation that in the disease state is the root cause for cancers, for diabetes, for heart disease, for obesity, for Alzheimer's, all the bad ones we know of. Chronic inflammation in an athlete will dampen performance. So in both aspects, what I want to do is bring down chronic inflammation as much as possible.
So that the number one priority, if you're working with a high performance athlete,
Yeah.
is bring down inflammation.
Chronic inflammation.
Chronic inflammation.
Right. So when you go to the gym, let's say when you were preparing for Mr. Olympia, right?
In my 20s.
In your 20s, okay. There was a time when you would be training super hard. And then just before competition, would you train just as hard or would you
I
start
would
taper?
mess up my training.
So that's a taper, right?
Yes.
Okay. The time when you were training super hard, you want inflammation. You're doing that. You're going to the gym, lifting super heavy, ripping everything apart, forcing the brain to repair. That repair process is an inflammatory process. So you want inflammation there. What you don't want is this chronic inflammation, which is this low-grade inflammation that doesn't get better and the body has to come up with all different ways to dampen it. And as a result, things go wrong. That's what you don't want. So acute inflammation in a strategic manner where, I'm in a training block, I want me to be inflamed. In fact, to a point where I tell my athletes who are in a training block, like, don't have antioxidants.
Really?
Yeah, because I want the inflammatory response to be high.
So you're talking about, say, a sprinter.
Yeah.
And of course, you say this is like tiny nanoseconds to
Yeah.
win a race.
Yeah.
So for that athlete, you want them to have inflammation
So
prior to, they're getting ready for an event.
So let's say 3 months before, they're putting in a 6-week intense training block. What I need to do is that training block, when we train, we are forcing the body to respond. And that response, the adaptation, requires inflammation. So if I dampen it by taking a bunch of antioxidants, berries, all the things that supposedly is good for us at that time, you're not going to get the response that you want, because what you're trying to do is like push them like this, then they plateau, and then when they recover from that training block, boom.
Wow.
And that's when you want to compete. But if I take an antioxidant here or use fish oil at the wrong dose, then I don't get the peak as high as one. I may get a blunted peak. So that's all the kind of work we're doing. So, but coming back to it, chronic inflammation is bad for both ends. And then similarly, if you look at, where does chronic inflammation come from and how does it affect the body? It affects it in 5 key areas. The energy pathways, so the mitochondria, your immune system, which is 70-80% of the immune system lives in your gut, your ability to mop up toxins and break down toxins, so your detoxification ability, your hormones, whether it's thyroid, testosterone, DHEA, hormones that affect the brain, and then your physical nervous system, your skeleton, and your muscle. These are the 5 areas. Chronic inflammation generally, is a simplistic manner, comes from these 5 areas or affects these 5 areas. These 5 areas, energy, immune, detoxification, hormones, and skeletal body with posture, nervous system, brain function, right, are also the same things that you want to make sure is really good. So when people are talking about, I'm this anti-aging specialist or I'm this sports specialist, or I'm like, why are you separating this? If you focus on these things, your outcomes are going to be the same. If you're a 60-year-old person right now and you set a goal and say, you know what, I'm going to be the best athlete I can be in 10 years.
At 60.
At 60.
Till you're 70.
Yeah. And you say, I've never been to the gym. That process, and again, I say the reason I'm giving you 10 years is a mistake people make and be like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. And then they get injured. Like the body needs time to adapt, right?
Yes.
We often overestimate what we can do.
I tell people start slow and steady. It's just to get in shape, where most guys try to hit the gym.
Wow.
New Year's resolution.
Yes.
And, they try to get in shape.
And then they stop in February because they injured.
And then I guess they say that it's called quitters, which is the 19th of January. It's when people quit.
I can't believe it's a thing, dude.
Yeah, it's actually called Quitters Day.
So I tell people okay, you know what? You often overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 10 years. So let's say you're 60 years old and you say, you know what? I want to get fit. I'll give you 10 years to get really fit. In that 10 years, if you work the way an athlete's going to work, eat the right thing, do the training, do the recovery, pay attention, stay focused, and respect the body, you're going to age better anyway, automatically. So that's why I make the distinction. There are a few things that there are subtle differences. For instance, you need to make sure brain health you need to pay attention to that as you're aging.
And I think that's key. I see that, when I was a younger athlete, everything was about my body, building my muscle, getting stronger, and now that I'm older, I look at the brain. I mean, if you lose your brain, if you don't have your brain, you lose everything. When you look at someone who has, severe Alzheimer's, physically,
immaculate.
They lose everything because it's the brain. So I look at it now that I'm older, 60, I look at that same thing to basically, I got to keep my brain.
Yeah. And again,
you're right.
I have
strong mind, strong body.
And here's the other thing, it's sad because when I work in the ER and, these patients will come in with dementia, right? It's really what's so surprising is physically, they're in great shape.
Yeah.
Great shape, but they don't know anything.
Yeah, they lost their...
So it's really important. There's a lot of this anti-aging movements or living longer movements, great, but you want to make sure your brain health is priority, which as an athlete, you may not think of it too much. I think there's concussion protocols and stuff like that, but you have youth on your side. You can recover better. The difference between the two is anti-aging means you have less time to recover from stuff. So you need to pay more attention to that, right? So number one, the brain. Make sure your brain health is really, really good.
What can you do for your brain health?
So many things, key things to keep it very simple. If you look at what the brain is made out of and what it needs, fat.
It's a fat.
Lots of fats. So healthy fats. And this is where I'm going
to
omega-3s and omega-3
EPA.
Yes. And you want to make sure. So again, a lot of people athletes I work with, they come to me and they're taking fish oil and go, how much do you take? And they go, 2 capsules. And I go, why 2? And they go, well, that's why it says in the bottle. I don't do that. I do a blood marker test called the omega-3 index. So I want to see not only the ratio of the EPA to DHEA, I want to see how much omega-3 do you have as opposed to omega-6 and omega-9.
Tell the difference, because I know omega-3s are very important. Right now, there's a big thing on seed oils being deadly.
Yeah.
They can make, that are really harmful. And that's because they have high omega-6s.
They throw the balances off. So
throws the balances off.
The omegas by themselves have no moral judgment. They're not good or bad, right? There's nothing. The body needs omega-6. It needs omega-9. It needs omega-3s. The ratio is really important. To put it in a very simple simplistic manner, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They reduce inflammation, right?
And we would say about omega-3, there's EPA, DHA, ALA.
As part of omega-3.
Omega-3s. And then I'm a firm believer the best omega-3s come from fish oil.
Cold fish.
And if you're a vegan, they believe that you can get it because ALA converts to EPA and DHA, but doesn't do it efficiently.
Not efficiently.
No.
Not efficiently.
So I always believe in you need to take from animal.
Yeah.
Even if you're a vegan, they say, no, I can't use that.
Yeah.
And then they think they're going to get it from, where else can you get omega-3? From almonds or...
Almonds, seaweed, all those kind of stuff.
You're not going to get...
The conversion, you need to eat sufficient amounts to get it converted. So, but omega-6 and omega-9 are supposedly the inflammatory.
So they cause inflammation.
So in a simplistic manner, yes, right? So omega-3s and omega-6 need to be in balance. One is so-called anti-inflammatory, one is so-called
but
inflammatory.
in the American diet, seems like there's too much omega-6.
Correct. So there was data, they went back and they looked at the tribals back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers. The ratio was 1-to-1. Now it is...
What is omega? We said fish oils have omega-3. What is omega-6?
Omega-6 comes from some seed oils, comes from certain animal fats. Usually the produce that we have, they're not isolated. They tend to have both. They tend to be richer in one or the other.
Okay.
But as a diet, the human diet has evolved, especially with the Western diet. We used to be 1-to-1. We then went to 1-to-4 and now 1-to-20. So we are so much more pro-inflammatory and less anti.
So a lot more omega-6 and omega-3.
Correct. So I measure that ratio. Based on that ratio, let's say you're here versus here, I'm going to tell you take a whole bunch more fish oil to bring it back up.
Bring it up to be even.
But if you are here and here, you don't need that
or
much.
Or cut out the foods that have omega-6.
Correct. Omega-3s, fish oil, great supplement. Make sure you know exactly how much you need to take, because not everyone is the same.
And this is through biomarkers that you can detect what a person needs.
Correct.
Now, what we just stated for anti-aging, this is important, is the brain.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the brain now, the brain health has to do with fats, having the proper omega-3 and omega-6.
The other thing the brain needs, you got to make sure that it gets plenty of water. So hydration, as a universally, we're all chronically dehydrated. We just don't seem to drink enough.
You did my biomarkers, you saw that I was dehydrated.
Correct. And you won't think it, right? But we need more water than you think, right? But again, you don't want to make the mistake of drinking just pure water without electrolytes.
So water with...
If you just drink pure water, 2-3 liters or 4 liters of pure water, you're going to dilute your electrolytes in the blood. So you don't want that. So for every liter, you need at least a pinch of salt. Nothing fancy. You just need a pinch of Himalayan salt.
Himalayan salt.
Yeah, that's what I
use. I use Celtic salt or Himalayan salt.
Perfect.
I use that pinch in all throughout the...
Yeah, if people are like, does it need 1,000 milligrams of sodium or 5? Don't get caught up in all that. Seriously.
But too much sodium is no good when you look at processed foods.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. But when you're adding it, just get raw salt, pink salt, Himalayan salt, Celtic sea salt, 1 pinch in a bottle. You're getting electrolytes in there.
And explain what electrolytes are. Not only sodium, magnesium,
potassium, chloride, magnesium. And then the reason we talk about Celtic and Himalayan salts is they have tiny small other things. Phosphorus, manganese. These are all tiny little things that just put in the water.
And all your athletes, you get them to not only drink plenty of water, but make sure that they get the proper electrolyte. You add salt to their water, like their drinking water, put a pinch of salt in the water.
So with high level athletes, what I do is I actually do a sweat test. And based on the sweat test, I know exactly, they fall into 3 categories. The normal sweat people, which means I know, okay, you need this kind of sodium supplement. It's 300 milligrams. Then you have the moderate to high, which you probably need about 500 to 600 milligrams of sodium. Yes, the sweat is saltier. And then you got the really salty sweaters. They'll need like 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Yeah, those at that level, you need precision, yes. But for most people, as long as you add electrolytes, the point I want to make is don't just consume water because you'll dilute the electrolytes in the body.
So you need to have a little bit of those
salt
electrolytes with salt to keep it.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just take table salt, is what I'm trying to say.
No, a lot of table salt is not great.
That's what I'm saying. If you go to the store, you buy this table salt. I always get, like I said, pink Himalayan salt or Celtic salt.
Perfect. Those are natural sources of salt, which, like I said.
So that's number 2, we said.
Yeah.
Fats, keep the brain hydrated, but make sure you have your electrolytes.
Yeah.
What else for the brain?
The third thing that the brain likes this is to keep your blood sugar under control. So the brain uses sugar for fuel. It also uses ketones for fuel. But for most people, primarily, like, you need your blood sugar to be working there. That's why when you don't, you start getting angry, you start getting frustrated, and like you're not right.
So what are you saying with blood sugar? You make sure that you're taking in sufficient carbohydrates. You don't want to be just on a keto diet.
You have to be keto adapted, which takes years
To get used to.
Right.
I don't believe in keto diets. Because it's high fat, small protein, no carbs.
Which is totally against what you do.
Yeah.
So to be in ketosis, there are definite benefits in certain neurological conditions where it's shown to absolutely save the brain. But for majority of us, you need sugar, you need fats. I don't necessarily need ketones for now. And so for the blood sugar, I want your blood sugar to stay level. I don't want it to have big spikes. So
it's stay away from table sugar. Stay away from high fructose corn syrup.
Correct. And make sure, but even if you have foods that don't have that, but you overeat those, you will still spike your blood sugar. That's the glycemic index, which is what you're talking about, right? Like so anything that's table sugar or maple syrup, there's high index, so it's going to spike your blood sugar, right? But
it then drops down.
But let's say I eat something that's not high on the glycemic index, but I eat a ton of it. That's called the glycemic load. That is also going to spike your blood sugar.
So if you eat low glycemic, say beans,
but you eat a ton of them, you're still going to spike your blood sugar. Right? So that's where you got to get the balance. And that's where things like the continuous blood sugar monitors, the CGMs, say what you want. I think it's a great way to educate people on...
Even if you're not diabetic.
Even if you're not diabetic.
Okay.
If you can get one, put it on, and then see, because it tells you.
For high athletes or for someone that's getting older?
Everyone. For both. For both, but especially if you're getting older, try to identify foods that keep your blood sugar stable rather than the ones that spike. You can experiment, right? You can eat it and see, I ate it, my blood sugar didn't go up. Oh, actually, an hour later it went up, and it went up super high.
And where do you get this kit? You can get this kit?
You can buy this, get a prescription. You need a prescription now to get it, but it's becoming more and more available, more and more readily available.
So basically, eat what you're going to eat, check your blood sugar to see.
Yeah, so you get an app, you put the device on here, it stays on for like 14 days. You have an app that it's measuring your blood sugar every 15 minutes.
I got to do that. I've never.
You've never done that?
No, and now you're telling me this. I really am interested because I look at what I take in. I stay away from simple sugars.
Yeah.
Very little, but everything is in moderation. My complex carbs consist of oatmeal, sweet potato, rice.
Yeah.
And not even brown rice.
Yeah.
I eat white rice.
Yeah.
Some fruits. Yeah. Vegetables, salads. I steer clear of any type of sugars. I mean, I won't drink sugar, but I do take in, and you tell me it's bad, I do a lot of sweeteners. Are sweeteners bad for you, using sweeteners?
Depends what type.
Stevia.
No, stevia is fine.
Sulfate K is probably not as good.
Not as good. Yes, correct. Yeah. Natural sweeteners.
Aspartame, I stay away from.
Not great for the brain. Natural sweeteners, I'm fine with. That's one way to also keep the brain healthy, avoid massive sugar spikes, both up and down. So then it's harsh on the brain, right? The final thing that I want to focus on is oxygen. How do you deliver oxygen? You must have the posture to be able to breathe. How do we all universally age? Head goes down, this gets down,
we see someone old,
and we're like this, right? Universally, across the world, if I told you, if you're watching this and I say, close your eyes and think of an old person, you'll never think of them like this. You'll think of them all like this, right?
And that's a big thing for me, is my posture.
Yes.
I'm always looking that I don't want to start.
When you do that though, you compress all the organs. So your breathing mechanics are not great.
Is this all done because it's like a time clock on your body?
It's a combination of father or mother time winning and gravity winning. You go back like this.
You can fight it.
So you can do things to mitigate it. If you do part and parcel of the so-called anti-aging process, should be the difference between, like we talk about high-performing athletes versus this is, one, you need to look after the brain more. Part and parcel of that, you need to spend more time, not just working on strength, but working on posture. So nowadays, there's a lot of emphasis. They keep going in spend like extremes all the time.
Yeah.
So now it's all is like strength is the new thing. You need to have strength. Yes, 100%. You need to have strength because if you fall down, you want to be able to get up.
Yep.
If you age and you're not strong, your risk of falling goes up. And when you fall, you can't pick yourself up. Both of which are no good.
And listen, I firmly believe in strength training.
100%.
I train 5 days a week.
Yep.
I still do many exercises now. I don't lift as heavy as I did with my 20s.
Yeah.
Because even though
You probably still can
do it, but then I'm in pain as I was. So I make sure everything I do is, I think I was explaining to you, I said, I train to failure. I do time over tension so I can make a weight much heavier. And so the muscle doesn't know weight, it knows failure. So to get that muscle to
it needs to
stay
fatigue.
strong.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of eccentric lifts.
Yeah.
But for me, why I feel that I've been able to age gracefully is I continually train with weights. But now what you're talking about is posture. What can I do to help my posture? What are the exercises or what are the things that I can do?
So the key things is, like I said, the difference between a high performance athlete, like they do a lot of posture work anyway. Don't for a minute think that they don't, they do. But as you get older, it's even more because you want to combat this thing that is coming, right? We started off like this in the fetal position. We're going to end up in the fetal position. Like universally, I see this, right? You got to get into postural exercises or movements that open this up, lift the chin up, put the head back, and keep you upright and tall. Whether that be, and pick what works for you. Yoga, Pilates, dancing, whatever that works. Some people use a lot of hanging.
Without stretching.
You can stretch.
Yeah.
You can stretch as well. But be careful about stretching. You want to be making sure that a warm muscle is what you stretch. You don't want to stretch a cold, right?
And yoga, I've tried yoga. It's hard.
It's not for everybody.
No,
some people just cannot do it. They do it.
I tried doing it. And actually, maybe because I have injuries and stuff, it was actually, some of the positions were painful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, yoga is one of those things. It's classic. You need to give it time.
Yeah.
So don't, if you can't get in a posture now, think about, if I do this every day, where will I be 5 years from now, right? It has been shown to be transformative because it changes the fascia.
By stretching.
In its own way. We think it's stretching, we don't really know because it's a 5,000-year-old art. And practice of yoga does wonders for the internal organs, including your lungs, your liver, all of that, but also for the tendons, for the ligaments, and for the fascia. But yoga is just one. There is Tai Chi, there's Qigong, but I suggest starting to participate in a sport that is no longer you consider exercise. Whether it's dance, whether it's playing pickleball, playing racquetball, something.
So playing pickleball can actually help your posture.
Yes, all of those things will get you away from this posture. And so that kind of things are where I want to, if you're talking about anti-aging and working on the brain, part and parcel of that is doing all of those. And that I think is a fundamental difference. As you get older, there are certain things that you absolutely need to do.
Now, I didn't ask you this, but how did the guy, you're a kid from Malaysia, this kid from Malaysia have all this information? You said you were an athlete. You said you played tennis.
Yeah.
You try to be a professional tennis player.
I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I was too short.
In Malaysia, you were playing tennis. I guess you told me afterwards you went to school in England.
So I grew up, my uncles all played sport. I grew up playing multiple.
Now,
in Malaysia,
as a family, were you poor?
Yeah, extremely low middle class. My dad passed away when I was 5 years old. So it was my mom and my siblings. She's a teacher. We didn't have much, to be honest. But we had...
You love sports.
I played everything. Badminton, ping pong, tennis, anything.
So apparently you got really good to the point that you were good enough to get a scholarship.
So I played really well, won lots of tournaments. And then I get a scholarship to go study medicine in the UK, in England. And I didn't want to go because I wanted to play professional tennis. But my coach was like, man, you're too short. You need to get your ass to medical school. So I went to medical school and then trained in medical again, got a scholarship. They paid my fees, no living expenses. So it was a struggle in England, man. There were many days when I didn't even have food.
Wow.
It was crazy. I didn't have books. I would study in the library, in the bookstore. Just got through it. Just put your head down, just get through it.
And that's what a lot of people understand. It's came from this little country. You still got an opportunity to go into England, but then it was even still...
it was still hard. It was never easy. But,
Well, you had a passion. You realized, you said you weren't tall enough to be a professional tennis player. That's kind of what your coach said. So then you put all your efforts into medicine.
Well, I went to med school, and again, I did it because my mom's dream was for me to be a doctor, right? It was more of her dream than mine. So I go to med school and many times, Rich, there were times when I had no money left, broke. And I don't know if I can live for another week here. How am I going to do this? But I couldn't bring myself to make that phone call.
You didn't want to disappoint your mom.
I couldn't. So I was like, just fight another day. And so, but then, things started changing. I started getting, I read this book that changed my life. Norman Vincent Peale. The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah, I read the book too.
And I decided, okay, you know what? I'm not going to bitch about about the weather, the food, or how difficult things are. And I'm going to outwork everyone else. People can be smarter, better, but they shouldn't outwork me.
You and I have similar philosophies.
I think the athlete mindset came up, and
you just talked about, I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder. I don't know if you know this, I was a pre-med student. I went to Rutgers University.
No way!
So I wanted to be a doctor, but I'm fortunate. I went the opposite way. I went to bodybuilding.
You're pretty good.
So I disappointed my parents. I said, listen, I want to be a pro bodybuilder. I'm going to move to California. They said, are you nuts? You're going to move to California? I said, listen, I want to move to California. I'm going to give me 1 year.
Yeah.
If I fail, I'll go right back to school. I moved to California, and I was in California, and I was there just like what you said. Okay, now I'm in California. I'm going to be Venice, training. So I started doing personal training, and I got to a point like you. I was broke.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't go back home. I can't disappoint my parents.
No.
So like you said, I said, there is no way I'm going to fail. And just like you said, there was no way you were going to fail. Be that doctor, because you didn't want to disappoint your mother. I didn't want to disappoint my parents.
Yeah.
They come, from an Italian background. They wanted their son to be successful.
Yeah, they mean well,
Yeah, and a lot of times you got to follow your passion. My passion was to be a professional bodybuilder, and what happened was I turned pro, and then my life just took off. So I love studying. I'm still a firm believer. They called me the professor because when I was a pro bodybuilder, everything was about what to eat properly, how to train properly.
Yeah. Use the science. Yeah.
So you became passionate to become a doctor, but then you wanted to stay more athletic.
Yeah, so
you went to sports medicine.
I finished med school, I trained as a surgeon, and then trained in the ER, and then discovered sports medicine and found hey, wait a minute, I'm not a pro athlete, but I can work with pro athletes, be in the field of professional sports, and be a doctor there. Which then set me on a completely different tangent, because when I really got into the weeds with athletes, I realized something fundamental. Medical school, and I went to Liverpool Medical School, brilliant old school medical school, right? You examine the patients, you ask questions, don't cut corners. And I'm so grateful for the training I had. But medical school trains doctors to study disease, okay?
Yeah.
And to use pharmaceuticals
to treat symptoms.
To treat disease. Okay? We are not taught how to use nutrition to treat disease. We are expected to know that by the general public. I don't know why, but I'm telling you, doctors
You're talking about preventative medicine.
Yeah. Doctors are trained to study disease and how to use pharmaceuticals to treat disease. So when I hear people going, they don't teach you any nutrition, they don't. Because that takes 4 or 5 years to study that. Otherwise, you'll be in medical school for 27 years.
So you'd studied also.
So then when I came out of medical school and I started working with athletes, I realized I didn't really understand health. And I needed to understand health in order to understand the athlete, to help the athlete. And that's where I started studying things on my own, nutrition. Now I've formally trained in functional medicine at IFM. I've learned Chinese medicine and acupuncture at Hamilton University. I've done culinary medicine at Tulane University. And I still study. I've studied genetics. I've studied strength and conditioning. Anything that involves sports, and now I'm big into
What's amazing with you, I go to doctors and I always debate with doctors because they'll always treat symptoms.
Yes.
But not
why
and how to cure you. And then I start talking about nutraceuticals because I've been in this business 27 years.
You know way more than the doctor.
They basically say it doesn't work. And I'm like, I'm not going to you anymore.
No, listen. Nutraceuticals work.
Yes.
Pharmaceuticals work too.
No, they do, but
right?
I believe
there's time and place for each one. If you came in, and you had meningitis, that's not the time for essential oils.
No,
I got
I'm 100% with you.
You need to take your appendix out. Nutraceuticals.
Well, that's the difference. I don't know if you saw that one podcast with Dana White where he goes, I never go to a doctor, only unless I break my arm. But I'm not going to a doctor to tell me what to do to stay healthy.
Yes, because we don't study health, right? So I studied health specifically to help with the athletes. And the athletes themselves effectively asked me questions that forced me to train myself to help them, right? During this whole beautiful process over the last, how long, 20 years working at the highest level, I found something about myself. I don't necessarily like to work on a car where the engine light comes on. If it comes on, I can address it. I want to learn to make the car go faster. And that's where I always looking to see how can I get this athlete to go better, faster? How to make this golfer better? How do I avoid them getting sick? I don't touch the swing mechanics and I don't touch the technicalities of the sports, but how do I make this athlete physiologically, functionally better so that they can practice better? They can absorb the training. They can recover better. Like, how do I do all of that? And so along this journey, that's what happened. So I started off from Malaysia and went to med school the traditional way. And now I still work in the ER.
That's what's amazing. I didn't realize that. I thought you were just a sports medicine, functional medicine doctor, but you still work. If someone breaks their arm, gets in a car accident, or has a heart attack.
Yesterday.
So
I worked in the ER yesterday.
Wow. So that's what you still do, because you still love medicine.
Yeah, I had a free ride. I got a scholarship to go to medicine. And the emergency room is one way, especially in America, where I can always give back. Because it doesn't matter if you have insurance or not. If you walk in the emergency room, you're going to get treated. I don't ask you, wait, can you pay my bill? I tell you, right? And then whatever happens after that, I don't get involved in that. And it gives me plenty of variety. And it's still, even though I get to work with world-class athletes and live vicariously through them when they win gold medals or they're winning majors or whatever, working in the ER still fundamentally gets my business.
That's really, it shows you that you're a true doctor.
Yeah, so it's, I still practice that side, but coming back to this, the journey has been so unpredictable. And look at this now, I'm sitting here with you. I saw your face on a magazine, Flex magazine, Muscle magazine, Joe Wader, you, and I'm like, look, I'm sitting here in a podcast with you.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, listen, getting to meet you, speaking to you, and I love the knowledge that you have, because
thank you.
I want to continually improve.
Yeah, likewise, yeah.
Because I want to be, like I said, I became an elite athlete. A lot of it was just, we'll talk about on other podcasts, it was mental, and how I trained, my attitude, all the things we did. We just talked about, inflammation. I prepared for a show, got to this point 2 weeks before, then lessen the training.
Yeah, taper,
and then taper, and then coming to the show where I came in, ripped and shredded, for the show. So all these things applies to all other athletes.
Yeah.
But I did it by just
experimenting.
Yeah. And everything I did was experimenting.
That's why I want to pick your brain.
Yeah. So it's more of it. I did have this love for nutrition, knowing the body, anatomy. I went to school for Rutgers, and I was like, I know that it's more important to know, with an athlete, you're just not going to go to the gym. Everyone follows the same diet.
Yeah.
Everyone follows the same training. Everybody's different. And I tried Arnold's training, and I tried Arnold's diet, and I go, this is not working.
For you.
The other way. But everybody's different, even with athletes. Certain people process carbohydrates more efficiently. Some people need more protein.
That's why I want you to wear the CGM to measure what works for you. That's why I want to do your blood work to know how much fish oil you need. And also that requirement changes throughout the year based on how much sun exposure you get, how you process.
For A1C.
A1C is your blood sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, the omega-3 index is, your balance between omega-3 and omega-6s.
But you also talked about the sugar in the brain.
A1C measures how well has your blood sugar been in a range or under control for the last 3 months. The CGM measures day-to-day blood sugar. Every 15 minutes it's giving you a reading.
And it's telling you on what you're eating, whether it's good or
whether it's spiking or not spiking.
I gotta get that prescription.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try it.
We'll get it.
I definitely want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been really interesting. Everything about just what we talked about in athletes, to the elite athlete, to the anti-aging. There's so much more that I want to pick your brain. We'll probably have another show, but I'm really happy that you're here.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
To be here.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have some more shows to talk about other aspects. So,
all right, let's do it.
Let's do it. So if you guys want to see more of this, make sure you subscribe, click the like button, and stay tuned for another episode.